Welcome to Health Empowered, the podcast where I dive into all things health, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. I'm Adriana, a trauma-informed physiotherapist and yoga teacher. On this podcast, I'll be interviewing experts in their health fields and humans living through healthcare experiences to provide you, the listener, with education and heartfelt stories. Let's learn together.
Today on the podcast, I am excited to bring on Elizabeth. Elizabeth is a licensed clinical social worker and registered yoga teacher. She has worked in the professional mental health world for 10 years and found a way to combine her clinical knowledge with embodied healing practices, such as breathwork, movement, and sound techniques. Her experience in the field includes private practice as a mental health therapist, outpatient treatment with adults, residential inpatient therapy, and clinical work in foster care. Throughout these experiences, Elizabeth has found a passion for empowering individuals to utilize their own strengths and internal resources to overcome life's challenges and its impacts on their lives. This led to the world of holistic approaches, including trauma-informed yoga. In 2022, Elizabeth completed her yoga teacher trainings, and in 2023, she felt led to ditch traditional talk therapy and focus solely on sharing yoga and somatic practices for healing. Elizabeth started her own healing journey with yoga in 2018 and has been obsessed ever since. She currently teaches trauma-informed yoga on YouTube and at her local yoga studio and at various mental health locations in her area, and I am so excited to have her on to chat today about trauma-informed yoga. Let's get to listening. Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome to the Health Empowered podcast.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's going good. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. Elizabeth and I actually met through YouTube. We both have trauma-informed yoga YouTube channels, and I reached out to her and we got to chatting, and she has a lot of knowledge on the subject, and I just knew I wanted to have her on the podcast so she could teach everybody else about it. So I am excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm excited. Yeah, anything trauma-informed yoga, mental health is always a great conversation. So
awesome. I was hoping that we could start the discussion so that the learners can learn a little bit more about you. If you don't mind sharing why you became a social worker, because that's originally your background, and why you decided to start using trauma-informed yoga in your practice.
Oh man, such a loaded question. I'll try to condense it. So why I became a social worker, I was very interested in working in mental health when I started college. And I explored several different majors, but I kept coming back to mental health, and I chose the social work route because that just seemed to resonate with me the most. I kind of felt like that was the most direct path to get to what I wanted to do. And I really wanted to work with people, do therapy. And when I got into this field, I had all kinds of different jobs, worked with all kinds of different people. And it was really, really great. I worked in mental health and traditional mental health for about 10 years. And about back in 2018 or so, I hit a wall for myself, like my own mental health. I was struggling a lot with anxiety. I was struggling a lot with burnout, my own unresolved trauma. And I just felt like I didn't have any resources. And I stumbled upon yoga. And I stumbled upon yoga on YouTube because that was really the only thing that I could afford. I couldn't afford to go to a regular studio on a regular basis. So I started practicing yoga on YouTube. And that started my path to yoga and what I call embodied healing. So healing that's more so about getting into your body and moving your body and breathing and connecting with yourself in a way that helps you to heal anxiety, stress, trauma, all of that. So, I explored in social work and in mental health. I explored some somatic mental health approaches, which are very mind-body based, very closely associated with yoga. And so I got very much into that somatic and yoga world in my professional career. And then I hit a little bit of a wall with that last year, back in 2023. I felt like I could only do so much in the therapy space, incorporating yoga. And so I decided to just fully branch out and teach only trauma-informed yoga and see where that took me. So yeah, that's that's where I am today.
So cool. So exciting to see the avenue and just the changes that we go through in life. I think that somatic practices and movement practices are something, at least that I've seen more commonly in the mental health field. I don't know if that's your experience, that's kind of a newer trend that people are recognizing, like the body and the mind together.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It's very new. It shouldn't be new. I wish it was more of a like baseline. This is what you do when you work on your mental health, but it is becoming more widely known and more widely accepted, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure there's ancient practices that already incorporated those things together, but it's just something that we're bringing together. And something I notice in physio as well, especially because I work with chronic pain, we can't separate the mind and the body with pain as well. So it's definitely needed to have these practices that really work together on everything.
I agree.
So for people who don't know the difference between traditional yoga and trauma-informed yoga, do you mind sharing exactly what trauma-informed yoga is?
Sure, yeah. So trauma-informed yoga is not just a made-up term. It's an actual yoga modality that you get trained in and certified to teach. There's a lot of people lately that I've found that are like, oh yeah, you teach like they think I just like threw on the word trauma-informed because I'm a mental health professional. Like, no. It's actually a modality. So if you walk into a yoga studio and they're just teaching just a regular yoga class or whatever, there's many different types of yoga, but if you just walk into any studio, you're gonna most likely encounter a teacher that's like, okay, we're going to start in child's pose, and then they're going to tell you exactly what to do, what to flow from, and they're just going to tell you, do this, do that, breathe for 5 rounds, do that, and in trauma-informed yoga, it's very choice-oriented. So whenever you come into a trauma-informed yoga class, it's very much, hey, if it feels right, I invite you to do this with your body. Hey, take a seat of your choice. Maybe you cross your legs, maybe you straighten your legs in front of you. There's a lot of choice to give people autonomy over their brains and bodies. Because when specifically people who have been through like sexual trauma or just anything where they fell out of control of their own body, they need to get back that choice and that autonomy, and it will help them further connect. So there's a lot of, hey, if this feels right in your body, choice-oriented language. We also are very specific about trying not to use the word pose. We try to use like, take this shape with your body, or perhaps you do, this type of a shape, child shape or triangle shape or whatever, so that we don't make it feel performative. Like when you're saying, oh, do this pose, for some people, it may feel a little bit more performative, and trauma-informed yoga is all about how it feels in your body and not anything about how it looks, how flexible you are, how strong you are. So it very much cues into how does this feel in your body? And that's really all we care about, connecting with your body, having autonomy over your body. And so that's the biggest difference. There's a lot of other nuances, but that's kind of the biggest difference that you'll see. So
yeah, that's been my experience too, and my training for trauma-informed yoga, the language I use as well. Absolutely. Yeah. Do you find that, I'm just thinking about the people that I've worked with who have experienced trauma, sometimes having a lot of choice can be very overwhelming. Mm-hmm. Do you find that that's something that happens in these practices? And what do you do if people are coming in and they're just overwhelmed with what exactly trauma-informed yoga is?
Mm-hmm. So when another component, at least that I use when I teach trauma-informed yoga, is I move with everybody. So when I'm cueing, I'm not just standing there staring, and like I'm doing the movements. And so if I'm giving a choice, for example, let's say we're in, what's an example I can give? Let's just say we're in a tabletop shape. Okay. And so you're on your hands and knees, and I'm like, okay, option 2, maybe lift one knee up, maybe bring one leg back behind you, or option just to keep your knee there. I will demonstrate both options. And if somebody is like not knowing what to do, they'll usually just follow what I'm doing. And so normally I will do the lesser of the two, like whatever is most accessible for people's bodies. And I find that if people are just completely lost as to, I don't know what I should do, they'll just follow what I'm doing. And that will get them kind of less overwhelmed and acquainted with their body, so that maybe next time they come to that class, they'll be like, oh, let me kind of explore what it would be like to lift my leg up and back as opposed to keeping my knee down. So that's just kind of example of they can follow me if they feel really overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think that's really nice. That's something I use as well in trauma-informed yoga because there is no assistance, right? We're not physically touching the people. That's another big difference with trauma and
Yes.
So yeah, you're often doing the class with the people. You're kind of one with the class. So I think that is a way for people to be able to see and to choose what they want to do based on what they're seeing you do if they do feel overwhelmed with the amount.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. In your experience, how have you noticed that trauma-informed yoga specifically has helped people with trauma?
I think that trauma-informed yoga connects people, gets people back in their bodies. And when I say getting back in your body, I mean, when we go through, I'm talking about like specific traumas. We go through something traumatic. Again, it can be anything. In order for us to stay in survival mode, we kind of have to disconnect with our bodies. Maybe we are like having to run from something, right? And you're not noticing the pain in your body and the exertion when you're running. Your brain is going, flee, go, run. And so our brain has this beautiful mechanism where it disconnects us from any physical pain that we may feel to get through something, to be able to survive and get on the other side, no matter what the trauma or the stressor is. And so in trauma-informed yoga, it's reconnecting with your body and it's saying, okay, what is it like to notice my heart, to notice my hips? Where am I holding the tension? And trauma-informed yoga is a little bit slower than most yoga classes as well, because it's really encouraging you to reconnect. So trauma disconnects us from our body. Any trauma, any stress disconnects us from sensations in our body. Trauma-informed yoga reconnects us in a very gentle and safe way.
I love that. So yeah, so lovely to have a modality that can help us to reconnect to ourselves.
Yes.
If there are people in the class, or even maybe you've experienced this yourself, where you do feel perhaps dissociated or not connected to your body, is that something that you can like pick up on students being like in the class or pick up in yourself? And is there a way for you to try and help people to reconnect if the typical cues aren't working?
It's a great question. I think it depends on the person. When I'm observing people in the class, different people like show that in different ways. So sometimes I can pick up on it. Normally, if we're holding something, and somebody's a little bit fidgety, or like they're just having a hard time focusing and staying in like a flow or a shape, normally that's telling me that there's some incongruence, right? There's some sort of disconnection between how they're feeling and what they're doing in their body. And so I will say it's another thing about trauma-informed yoga, you never call anyone out, ever, ever, ever. I will cue, like, let's say I'm instructing them to hold something and it's kind of uncomfortable and I can see that somebody's a little bit, they just keep moving around. So I'll say something general, like, if this feels really uncomfortable, if this feels really uncomfortable for you, I invite you to just come back to the present moment. Like, just come back to your breathing, notice your breath, reconnect, and notice what that feels like. So I'm constantly instructing people to, if you feel discomfort, come back to your breath. Notice what that's like. If your body is feeling like moving, what does it feel like maybe to just stay in stillness? So again, if I'm noticing someone's disconnected or dissociated from the practice, I just will give general cues to come back to your body or come back to your breath. So
yeah, that's a great way for sure, I think, of helping people. And you're right. We don't want to call anyone out or make anyone feel uncomfortable. So that's a great way to just give a lot of options. Yeah. Move my microphone because my cat is.
I see that. I love it. The animals always know when you're trying to do something and they're like, let me bother you right now.
I'll lose my train of thought.
All good.
Yeah.
I do have one more thing to add to that as well, since we're on the subject of dissociation. I said it a little bit, but just to kind of or hone in on it more, specifically with dissociation, when we are feeling dissociated, we're especially disconnected from our bodies. So I cue people sometimes to even like, hey, maybe bring your hands to your chest. Maybe notice that pressure on your chest, or maybe just bring your hands, like press them down on the tops of your legs. So there's even like a physical, like coming back to your physical body. What does it feel like to feel your body, to notice your breath? So there's a lot of physically connecting to kind of help you come out of that dissociative state or just reconnect. So
amazing. Yeah, such a good tool so that you have something else to focus on, basically, instead of everything else that's going on.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Since this podcast focuses on health in general, I know trauma-informed yoga can be very helpful for trauma. Do you notice that it's also helpful for health in general, whether it's physical health, emotional, mental, spiritual? What's been your experience with that?
I think trauma-informed yoga is applicable to anyone, any physical health, just mental well-being in general. Even if you're someone that maybe you haven't had quote unquote big traumas, everyone has experienced at least one hard thing in their life. Everyone experiences daily stress, the regular things that just come up being a human and living in an imperfect world. So I think trauma-informed yoga can be applicable to anyone, even people that are new to yoga. If you're just wanting to practice yoga for your general health, trauma-informed yoga is a great introduction into the yoga space because it's not intimidating. It's much less intimidating than, a teacher just telling you what to do and making you hold poses and go deeper in this or do more of this. It's much more inviting and choice-oriented. So I think it's a great introduction just to improving your health and wellness in general, if that's what you're looking to do.
Yeah, I agree with that statement for sure. I find it less intimidating for myself too, because there is so much choice. I know some people, not that they have it like the opposite experience, but I know sometimes people feel like, oh, it's too slow or there's too much choice.
Yes.
Which maybe it's just not the class for them, which is the thing about yoga is there are so many different options. But yeah, I definitely find trauma-informed yoga does have a unique way of being, and it can be very helpful for so many people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want the listeners to know about trauma-informed yoga or about somatic practices or embodiment? Anything you haven't touched on?
I really want people to know that no matter what the modality is, yoga, no matter what the type of yoga, trauma-informed yoga, some other type of yoga, any type of somatic therapy, or just any type of practice that connects your mind and body, every single person needs some form of that in their life. And I know that's a very everyone can benefit, but I think everyone needs that in their life. So no matter what it is, whether it's some sort of somatic therapy, whether it's a type of yoga practice, everyone needs it because, again, we all experience stress. We've all been through tough times. And whether or not you realize it, the fast-paced world we live in is disconnecting us constantly. Even just staring at screens all day disconnects us from our bodies. So somatic practices, yoga, everyone needs it and everyone can benefit from it, even if it's just a couple times a week or a few minutes a day. I think we all need to have some sort of practice that reconnects us with ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. I think it can be so empowering and so beautiful, regardless of the modality, like you said. So many different ways we can connect. Yeah. There's 2 questions that I like to ask everybody before we wrap up. So I will ask you now. Yeah. So the first one is there a book that you've read recently or a podcast that you've listened to that has educated you on your health that you would like to share with the listeners?
Yes. I'm looking up right now because I had it in the back of my head. Okay. So, this author, and I don't know if I'm saying his name exactly correctly, but his name is Gabor Mate, Gabormate. He's an amazing, I believe he is a psychiatrist. He is a doctor, and he has worked in mental health for years and years and years and years. He's written many books on mental health, and his big thing is having an alternative approach to mental health that's not so mainstream and really looking at all aspects of our health from a holistic point of view, meaning we're not just looking at diet or exercise or mental health disorders. We're looking at all of it from a very holistic lens. And all of his books are just fantastic. But the one specifically that I would recommend is called The Myth of Normal. And it just breaks down health in our society, mental health, physical health, and just from a really beautiful, again, holistic perspective. It's a great, I think, introduction into looking at your health from maybe a little different lens than you were raised to look at it, or maybe that, your mainstream everyday doctor is looking at it. So yeah, it's a good one. It's a staple. And I think that everyone can benefit from it.
Yes, I love him. I feel like he is going to be a common reoccurrence of what people say as their author or their podcast or anything for this.
He's so good. I'm not a fangirl of anyone really in the world, but he is somebody that if I met him, I would just want to give him a hug and just be like, thank you for the work that you put out. He's just amazing. I love him.
Yeah, I agree. I've read all his books, and each one, there's just so many nuggets of information to learn. Yes. Yeah, they're so amazing. Mm-hmm. Love it. Yeah. And then the last question is, what does empowered health mean to you?
Empowered health. I love this question. When I saw that you sent it to me, I thought it's such a good question. For me and my approach that I've taken I speak from the mental health lens. Empowered health is having the tools to help yourself. And what I mean by that is we live, especially in the mental health world, we live in a culture where we're so reliant on diagnoses. It's like, okay, you have an anxiety disorder, you have a dissociative disorder, and it almost becomes like it defines us, right? And it's, oh, well, I struggle with this because I have an anxiety disorder, or I'm on this medication because I have an anxiety disorder, or whatever it is. And I think when you are empowered to take control over your own health, you are not relying on this diagnosis or this medication, or, whether or not you're on medication, but you have the tools and the resources for yourself to be like, every day I can wake up and I can get on my yoga mat and practice yoga for 20 minutes, or every day I can go on a walk, or every day I can get up and drink a big glass of water first thing in the morning, or whatever it is. You have the tools to empower yourself to get better and be better. Whatever that looks like, whether it's physical health, mental health, and having people along the way to guide you and give you those tools and resources so that you can then take them and do them on your own. That was always my goal as a therapist. Hey, here are tools and here are resources, and we're going to do this together for a while. And then at some point, my hope is that you can take these and do it on your own, and you no longer need me. Same as a yoga teacher. I want people to take the breath work and the movement and the stretches and take them outside of my videos or outside of my classes and be like, I can wake up and do this on my own and I can get the same results. So to me, that's empowering yourself for your own health, whatever, mental, physical, all of the above.
Mm-hmm. That sounds very much like accessibility, which I know is important to you. And it is something that's important to me. So yeah, you're kind of empowered to have those own choices. You have the accessibility to do the things on your own, which just makes it easier, right? Because you don't have to rely on other people. Of course, it's nice to rely on other people for certain things, but there are certain times where you might not have the resources or the time. And so if you are able to do things on your own, it can definitely be empowering.
I could not agree more. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on today, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
Talking about trauma-informed yoga. I love the way you speak about it, and I think people will learn a lot about it from listening to you today. Before you run away, if you would like, you can share where the listeners can find you, if that's online, local. I'm in Canada. I don't know if anyone will be local to where you are, but you never know.
You never know. You never know. I am in Tennessee. So I live in a very small town in Tennessee. It's called Sparta. Basically, the whole Upper Cumberland area is kind of my area. And I do teach yoga, local yoga classes, but I'm also very much online. So I have a YouTube channel. It's called The Yogi Social Worker. And everything on there is trauma-informed yoga. I have practices from 5 minutes to 30 minutes. And then I'm also on Instagram at The Yogi Social Worker, but I'm mostly on YouTube. I also have a website on there. So yeah, check me out, The Yogi Social Worker. Or if you're somehow happen to be in the area, come to my classes. All of that is on my website. So.
Great. Thanks. And I'll put that in the show notes too so that people can find it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely. It's always lovely to talk trauma-informed yoga.
For sure. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Health Empowered. To support the show, please rate, review, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for support on your health journey, visit my website, empoweredmovement.ca. Have a great day and stay empowered on your health journey.